And you know I'll be with OGs. Steady rolling with them killers, nigga. And you know I keep it on me. Steady rolling with them righteous, nigga. Middle finger to the police.
What's going on, stop?
You already know, man. I know music, my shit. You know my nigga. Just pass me a little something, bro. Coolin', man. I said foreign bitch on me. Yeah, trying to smoke me. Friends trying to phonies. Get your bread by your lonely.
Shoes with them all right shoes. I be stepping up some stores. I be some type food. But on my life, yeah, I had to grind. Yeah, I had to get in. There's money on my mind and all my life. Yeah, I had to grind. Yeah, I had to get.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Cambridge InsideOut, the sequel. I'm Susanna Sagat, and my co-host is...
I'm Robert Winters.
And once again, something's come between us, Robert.
Oh.
Actually, this is a very special person that's come between us. For those of you who don't know, we have our special guest today, Alice Wolf.
Hello, everybody.
Who's getting a glass of water right this minute. Thank you so much. See, this is really
Thank
live.
you. This is really be live. To you.
To you, absolutely. And
So the other thing, I know it's live and this will be repeated, but today is live is election day. And so I haven't voted yet. I can't wait to vote. And I see that I was noticing the
Yes,
I voted
right,
sticker.
absolutely.
So what's the election today?
All right, so here's the story. This is very important. I'm glad you started this. First of all, no, before we start that, I want to say congratulations to you, Susanna, and you, Robert, for resurrecting Inside Out. I think it is great. As I wrote to Susanna, she is prettier than Glenn Kuchar than was when he did this before. But I remember that show, the original show, very well.
Yeah.
And I think you two are really well suited to do this, and I think you're going to have great fun.
we've
I
actually
think,
been having great fun.
And
I
I think
we
it's
should have her over more often.
I think
and
so.
not only that, but I think it's really wonderful for the people of Cambridge who can watch this to have the the sort of the perspective of two people who've been around Cambridge for a while, who know what's going on, who bring on people who presumably know what's going on. and I think it's really good for the city. So for all of us residents. So thank you for doing this.
And we're so
Thanks a
glad
lot.
that you're here today.
Well, thank you. And so this is election day, and I want to start, if I may, with talking about the election. What election is it? What is this? This is an election in October?
Well, we have an
Okay,
election
so-
every 2 months here, it looks
Yeah.
like.
So this is a special election to
Right.
fill Ed Markey's seat in the 5th Congressional District. Now, the important thing to say for those people who are watching live, and I know it will bore the people who have to see it later, is you still have time to go out to vote. The polls are open until 8 p.m., and this is only a little after 5:30. So you've got plenty of time to go out and vote. And you should go out and vote. Now, in case you don't know whether you are in this district, because Cambridge was divided in half, and we may get to this a little later,
Exactly in half.
was divided in half in the last redistricting. I brought a cheat sheet, and I might not even have to look at it, of which precincts are voting today for Congress. And it starts with Ward 3, Precinct 2A, Ward 4, Precincts 2 and 3, Ward 6, Ward 7, Ward 8, Ward 9, and 10-1 and 10-2. And I didn't need my cheat sheet.
I'm going to see
pretty
if I
good.
have a picture of it. But
I couldn't do that.
Well, I looked it up today, so let's be fair. But that I could remember it is a good thing.
Well done.
So the other thing I'm going to tell you, and I know you're going to like this
think I
because you
can look
like
this up.
election data.
I do.
As of 4:30 this afternoon, in 2 precincts I know about because it was reported to me by my husband, at 4:30 in
You got him out as a poll
Ward
watcher.
10, Precinct 2, 433 people had voted, and in Ward 8, Precinct 1, 167 people had voted. Now, both of those are very low, I
Yeah.
just want to tell you. So, you who are out there who are watching now, you can still go to the polls. They're open till 8. Now, there are no excuses unless you really are ill or you really have a real excuse. If you just feel like eating supper, that is not a good enough excuse. And if after this
If you
show,
vote, Alice will bring you a sandwich.
no, didn't say I'd bring a sandwich, but I do have an offer that if at 6:30 when this program is over, you still want to go to the polls and you need a ride there, I'm going to give you my phone number and you can call me and I will give you a ride to the polls. 617.
Wait. In the meantime, let's give you this number now and then see if you change your mind by the end of the show.
617-868-9653. So
You're a
that's,
wild woman.
well,
Living
you know,
reckless.
it shows how serious this really is.
Yeah.
But also, this is live, so it's a call-in show. If you want to call in and talk to us, ask any questions, the number is 617-876-0055.
That's right. But you have a cheat sheet. You see, you can just read it right there.
It's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, all right.
All right. We could go anywhere with this, but I thought, because I actually was going back and looking at some past history.
See, the problem with having Alice here is that she has such a great history of accomplishment and achievement in the city that it's hard to pick one thing. She started in the school committee and rose all the way up to a very prominent and important position in the House of Representatives and is now a building in our city.
Well, wait a minute. I don't think that sounds too good. Service center is what
Multi-service center, that's right.
So
yeah.
go ahead, Robert.
Right, so I was looking it up here, and you're one of those people who has actually served, was it 4 terms on the school committee?
Yes.
4 and 5, I'm guessing now. I actually wrote it down, but I'm going to try and guess.
Yes,
anyway.
4 terms on the school committee.
And
Yes,
5
8
on the
years.
city council?
5 on the city council, of which 2 I was mayor.
All right. Now,
2 years or 2 terms?
2 years.
2 years.
years.
2
Yeah.
years, so 1 term. And then I was 16 years, 8 terms in the House of Representatives.
Wow, pretty good.
Well, some people think yes, some people think no. What can I say?
Well,
I think it was good, but some people might not feel that way. You never know.
now, first thing I was going to ask is simply this, because there are new candidates seeking seats on the school committee and city council this year. And I sometimes wonder what possesses a person to want to actually be a candidate for public office. So what possessed you back when you first ran in 1973?
That's a good question. I can answer it really fairly simply. The question of what possessed me is interesting if you knew me when I was younger, when I was a teenager and stuff. I had, until last year, unfortunately, a very close family friend died, you know, the last one of my parents' generation. And she used to say, "I cannot believe that you are in politics. You were such a mousy, quiet kid." So it's a relevant question to say, what would possess you? And, you know, honestly, it did have to do with the kids and education. And not only my kids, actually, I have a few people in the city, only a handful that I blame for my political career. And the ones actually, I won't name them because I don't think it's fair, but, you know, one dragged me into a high school reform thing when I think either my older son was not yet born or he may have been like 1 year old. So that's how it actually started.
Was this actually in the period when they were
In the
doing
early 60s. It was in the early 60s.
So I've always heard that
1960s, in case anybody wonders what's
okay, so that right. So that precedes sort of.
Some people think that was several centuries ago, but it wasn't that long ago.
No. But my understanding is things like the controlled choice program in Cambridge was sort of crafted in the wake of some of the controversy that happened with the Boston desegregation and whatever.
Well, I get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
But this is before. This is well
precedes
before.
that.
Oh,
Okay.
this precedes that by pretty close to 15 years.
Really?
10 to 15 years. Yep. No, 15 years. And so this was this was much smaller efforts that were going on, and I was in a group. And then I was also involved, I don't even remember how I got involved with this, with a program that we had in the elementary school called Follow Through, which was a follow through of Head Start, early childhood K through 3, wonderful program that was in 3 schools. And I don't even know how I got on that advisory committee, but I did. And then it really more specifically got to be, so I got very involved in school issues, and I guess I could say it's all about my kids, but actually the thing that got me to be political, and some people in the city will remember this is really political, was when the school committee kicked out the citizen participants who were supposed to help to select a superintendent of schools in 1970, right. And appointed the existing acting superintendent, who was Frank Frisoli,
Right.
at a huge hearing, at a huge event that was at that time in the Ringe Tech Auditorium. That was the old Ringe Tech, and I was present. And when that vote took place, I was one of the citizen participants. When that vote took place, I said, okay, PTA president is fine. I was the PTA president at the time of my son's school. PTA president is fine, but politics is where it's at. Yeah. And that's actually what got me politicized. I didn't act, in the next election I did not run. I supported the slate of candidates who promised to overturn that vote and bring the citizens back in. And Barbara Ackerman was elected mayor and then constituted a majority on the school committee. And in fact, Al Florence Cheatham was appointed. The citizens were brought back in. Al Florence Cheatham was appointed to the superintendency after that. In the following election, which was 1973, I ran for the school committee myself, and I was elected in the first time I ran.
Came in third in #1 votes.
This is pretty good.
Yeah, the first time I ran. But so here's a little political fact. Okay, so I had been the PTA president in my community. I was very active around getting parents to participate in making decisions, as I said, citizen president. But more specifically, at the time, there was a principal opening in the Peabody School, which was the area we lived in, and in the Roberts School, which was down in Area 4, a very different area. We worked together. We collaborated, which is now Maynard Fletcher, right down in Area 4. And I collaborated with the community schools people and the people there who were active, which was much harder. There were not as many active parents, but there were people who were active. And we got to participate in selecting our principal. And that was, so I had be through follow through that activity, as well as the PTA, I had a pretty, I had the base sort of in my neighborhood, but I had a lot of contacts. And one of the, for example, and it was very close, the person who was the community schools coordinator in the Roberts School, whose name, it was a familiar name, but it's not that one, Howard Hughes. He was a young...
He's very reclusive. So
who eventually moved to California. He just last summer came and knocked at my door and visited me.
Really?
He was in Cambridge.
Yeah.
And he just showed up the other day at this naming... briefly, he was in town. Ken Reeves told him this. He came to see me. So we built very strong friendships and alliances in doing that kind of work.
I think that's absolutely true. Actually, even with candidates running together, friendships are born out of these things that can last for many, many years. People who even back when I was a candidate 20-something years ago, I still see these people, and it's always just sort of like a reunion when I see them.
Right. Well, Howard, actually, the next time I met him after he moved to California was at the Democratic Convention that took place in California when we were both delegates. I can't even remember. I think it was Mondale Ferraro, but I'm not sure of that. And then it was many years before I saw him again. I think I didn't see him again until last summer. So,
Really?
Yeah.
My brother was a New York City cop then, and he was the one who ran the escorts for Geraldine Ferrara. And pick her up at her house. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, good. Geraldine Ferrara, all right, so you want to get to another political story.
Go right
When
ahead.
she was running for vice president, there was there was a great big to-do in City Hall Plaza, which I went to. And then there was a smaller kind of party with maybe 50 women, women who were involved in politics with her in one of the hotels. I left that place and I was like walking in there. I said, my God, I'm acting like I've been drinking wine, but I hadn't had a sip of anything. It was so exciting.
Yeah, I remember.
It was so exciting. And here's a really funny war story. So I was I was an alternate, I think, actually, to be exact. I think I was an alternate for the Mondale Ferraro convention for them. And I was the whip of the alternates, which meant I was helping all the women who were alternates to get on the floor to be able to vote for Geraldine Ferraro. And in the end, there was nobody left there kept putting me on the floor, so I never got to vote. But I got all the other women alternates on the floor to vote for Geraldine Ferraro.
Good job.
That's a great story. Alice, there's one story I'd love for you to tell. We're giving advice to some of these newbie politicians, the people running for city council offices. I love the story you tell about going to hit one last door, when you were thinking about whether you should stop for the night or hit one more door. Do you remember that story? You better say yes, because otherwise.
Well, hit one more.
That you were worried.
No, it actually was not for the city council.
The school committee, right?
The school committee.
Yeah.
It was so
this is an important story.
This is a great story.
All right.
This was the first run, the one you just mentioned, that I came in third and number one votes.
Yeah.
So, I was out on the last night, the night before the election, knocking on doors in my neighborhood down in, it would now be 10-1 and 10-3, I think. But anyway, down in, around Walden Street and that, abutting my neighborhood, sort of in that area. And I was knocking, and I had decided I needed 100 votes in that particular precinct. And I thought, I don't know, I still don't have 100. And so I was out till I think 9:30 knocking on doors. I must have been out of my mind. But anyway, I did, and I may have been with somebody else, I can't remember, but I stopped about 9:30. And I said, I hope that worked. I got 101 votes in that precinct.
I love that.
Well
That's
done.
a really important story. If you have to go out and do that last
Well,
door.
so you asked me how did I get to vote? Connecting with that story, the first meeting I had for that election, I had a few people in my living room. One person had quite a bit of experience. Some of them had lived in Cambridge for a long time. My campaign, ultimately, I think both of the people who were my campaign managers were there. One is Dennis Cannon, who later worked a lot with Paul Tsongas, and one was Dan O'Connell, who had grown up in East Cambridge and was then a law student. And I said, okay, so what do I have to do in this election to win? And they said, what you have to do is go out and knock on doors. And I said, you want me to do that? But I came to love it.
Really?
I came to love it. I mean, it took me a while. But the thing about the thing that is challenging about knocking on doors and takes you a long time to get over this is you think everybody's going to reject you. And they're going to be mean to you. They're going to be nasty to you.
Yeah.
And so you have to get up your courage, kind of, to go out and face that world. But
People are nice.
In all honesty, I could say I almost never ran into that. All of the years that I knocked on, I don't know how many doors, and I knocked on doors in housing projects, in apartment houses. The only thing that ever was might be a pain, is in some buildings, people did not like it if you found a way to get in and knocked on the doors in apartment houses. Particularly when condos came. Apartment houses was not hard because that was under rent control.
Sure.
People liked people who supported rent control in those buildings. But later it got a little bit tougher. Some of these buildings, a little more like gated communities, and they did not like you to do that. So you had to change your style and find somebody who had lived in there and would not knock on doors. But I found that I loved it, and I found that people were very responsive, and there were very, very few nasty people. Sometimes people said, I don't care, you know, no, I don't
Well,
want to talk to you, but that, you know, that's not.
I've asked other candidates, actually even on this program, about this, you know, my supposition was that candidates start doing that thinking they knew all the issues and what was important, and then the moment they actually start knocking on doors and meeting and talking with people, they find out that what people really care about might be completely different than what they thought about, so that it becomes a real education for candidates to do this.
That's definitely true, and you have to have no idea, you know, and there would be some places you come, you just say, okay, my name is Alice Wolf, I'm running for the school committee, fine, goodbye. And then there'd be places where my danger point was that I would spend too long talking to people about issues. And you're
Which
not
is a
allowed,
mistake.
and you're
It's a
not
big
not
mistake.
allowed to do that.
That's why
because
you always have your campaign person there say, oh, Alice has to go now, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, here's a great story. You'll like this door knocking story. So one day I was knocking on doors going down Green Street, and I knocked at one door. There was a big guy standing in front. He said, oh, go on. So it turned out there was some quite well-known guru who lived in there. It was a little scary, the whole thing. But, so he had one woman in one arm and one woman in the other arm, and I thought, well, I have nothing to worry about here. He's got his arms filled.
Busy.
I did my spiel and left.
That's pretty good.
That's, yeah.
Actually, one of the stories I heard about door knocking, I always laughed at. I won't say who the candidate was, but he was going around in a building, and somebody's smoke detector was off, and he didn't know how to turn it off. So he actually went up in there and he says, "I know how to turn that off, and I'll be glad to do it, but you have to promise me a number one vote." And he did it. And actually, this person didn't particularly like the candidate, but gave his word, so got that number one vote.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Oh, number one votes. Yeah, it's really good not to have to run under PR. It's tough.
Yeah.
Running under PR is tough.
It's very different from running as a state rep, right?
Yeah, it's very different. Running under proportional I'm very supportive of the result of proportional representation, but there are issues about what it, you know, basically you're running against the people who are closest to you in policy.
Those are your biggest competitors. Yeah.
And those are your biggest competitors, and that's weird,
Yeah.
in a way. And I think, now that we're talking about that, I think we miss not having people sort of collaborate on slates and stuff, because I think we're losing a little of that ability to collaborate.
I agree that's, and at the time there was a CCA slate, but there was, even though it wasn't such an official thing, the sort of the non-CCA slates, the so-called independents, were just as cohesive, and it did help to sort of define
So there were
people.
slates before.
I think from the very beginning of PR elections in Cambridge, back even before the CCA was official, when it was still the Committee for Plan E, I think they were endorsing slates of candidates.
So people would go out and say, vote for all of us.
You know, every candidate has to still promote themselves. It's sort of like a pack of a non-aggression pact of sorts. And
Well,
you know.
I just heard a story that's timely with that, which surprised me, and it's timely because of what's happening. I don't know whether you two know that Bill de Blasio, who is running for mayor of
Former
New York,
Cambridge.
Well, he grew up in Cambridge.
I
He
saw
went to
that
the
quote from
Cambridge
Eric
story.
in the article.
Yes, right.
Eric Wolf was interviewed about
Yeah,
this.
well, I was interviewed too, but Eric was quoted because he knew him better than I did. But I'm a big supporter of Bill's, and he grew up. He was 1 year ahead of my oldest son Eric, and he was very active in stuff here. Both he and Eric actually went to represent their high school at the state student school committee stuff, right? And I learned from this, actually the article, there was an article in a New York Daily News that as I said, I was interviewed for, but I wasn't quoted, which said that Bill actually came back to Cambridge when he was about 24 and wanted to run for the school committee.
Really?
And that's, yeah, I didn't know
And
this.
instead, he's running for mayor
Well,
of
wait a
New
minute.
York.
He said, well, and apparently it was said that he went and talked to some group about running who ran slates or were supporters, and they said he was too young. And
Really?
and the rest is history, as the article said. So we lost a great political person because
Somebody made a bad call.
somebody made, yes, and I thought about it because I had coffee with one of our young school committee candidates recently who's a graduate of our high school and stuff, and I thought, he was so great, and I thought it was so wonderful to have this person who'd been in the city and had been to our schools and stuff, and I thought, what a bad call that was.
Yeah.
Well, you know, our show is about to end in a couple of minutes, and we will be back at 6 p.m. and we will continue our conversation with Alice Wolf. You're welcome to call in 617-876-0055. And before we go, I just want to tell you one quick story. You know, Alice started this show by saying about how people were shocked that she was mousy and shouldn't run. She was shy. Well, at the building, at the community services dedication the other day, the Speaker of the House of Representatives of Massachusetts got up on the podium to praise Representative Alice Wolf, and he said, "Alice, since you've been gone, I went to the doctor for my yearly checkup, and I want you to know my blood pressure is down by half." So clearly, she is not as shy and mousy as she pretends. Now, of course, her retort was just as good, because she went and said, "Mr. Speaker, I just went to the doctor and my blood pressure is half as much too." So,
I don't know what this says about life and politics.
well, just you have to fight. Every day is the struggle
Yeah.
for the causes that are important to you. It's really
If
an
you do
important
your
thing.
job, that's
It
what
will-
you do.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we only got about 20 seconds here now, so I think we ought to just wrap it up for now, but we'll be back
We'll be back
shortly.
right away.
And,
So, this is Cambridge Inside Out. And we have 10 more seconds, so I guess we'll have to say
What?
it again and again.
10 whole seconds? No. There
That
you
was
go.
bad timing.
See you in a second.